Good morning again. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance and Auditing Committee for September 21st, 2023. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Good morning again, and thank you. All right, Director Cochran.
Here.
Director Giudice is absent. Director Grosboll.
Here.
Director Hernandez. Here. Director Rodoni is absent. Vice Chair Barr.
Present.
Chair Rabbit is absent, and President Terry.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum. Also in the room, we have Directors Garbarino, Hill, Maston, and Thier. And in the room, we also have Dennis Mulligan.
Present.
Jill Wire.
Yes.
Eva Bauer-Purbush.
Present.
Kim Manolius.
Morning.
Morning. Dave Rivera.
Morning, President.
And Kelly Hopper.
Present.
Thank you. That confirms that.
Great. Sounds like enough people to move. The first item is a ratification of previous actions by the Auditor Controller. You'll find that on pages 5 through 24. And the report from PFM starts on page 9. Joe and I just had a discussion. There is no one here from PFM, but I was hoping that that he would give us just some highlights.
I will do that. Just it's interesting.
Computer decided to go into the I can't find myself mode. So I don't have the report in front of me. But I can tell you a little bit about the report. If it starts on page 9, goes into page 10. What I've said to Director Parr when she asked me to do the report is it actually is it is actually a very boring report, which if you're a public agency and your job is to steward the public funds until you're able to spend them on a very worthwhile project that Ava is going to do, then actually a boring market is exactly what you want. I mean, it's just, nothing is likely bad going to happen, and we are not built for the upside anyway. We are here to keep things from going worse. So it's a good thing. And essentially what that means is the interest rates have been kept stagnant. That means the yield on our treasuries have stayed the same. Remarkably, on the bottom of page 10, there's a little chart that tells you how the change from the last month, and it's almost nothing across the entire 5-year line that they measure. And that, if you guys remember from, I'm going to say all the recent years, those lines have been bumping all over the place, which is unusual. It became normal, but it's actually very unusual. Usually they sit there. Starting on page 11, inflation is still high compared to what the Fed wants and what most economists would like to see, something more down in the 2% or in that area. It's double that. But spending is still high also. So people are still spending, and if people are going to spend, they're going to potentially force up the price of goods if they keep up with that. So that's positive. Another positive, the unemployment rate has stayed low. It ticked up a teeny bit, but it's still historically low, below 4% in the 3s. But jobs continue to grow. So if you put those two together, it makes it look like potentially some of the people who decided not to work during the pandemic might be coming back into the marketplace, because if they didn't come back into the marketplace, you would expect the unemployment rate to fall even lower, and it hasn't done that. So it looks like maybe some of them are coming back. I don't know if you remember, but we lost, I think it was like 4 or 5 million people disappeared during the pandemic, and they were no longer in the labor market. Now, some of them were of an age where they could retire, but others just sort of disappeared. And that is not unusual when you have a big upset in the labor market. So they may be coming back in, which is also normal, to absorb some of these new jobs that are coming out, and that's on page 12. With that, I would say you have a little bit more on the remaining parts, but I would say we'll skip over those and let you know that the portfolio continues to be very widely and safely invested. Those charts and tables are in the back of your report. The pie chart explains that. It follows your investment guidelines, guidelines we give to PFM. And last but not least, for the first time since, I think it was like 2011 or something, the portfolio is earning more than 3%. So it tells you that is a pretty remarkable change in the market. As you know, the market has been in the 4s and 5s for short-term investments for a couple of years now, but when you have such a large portfolio as we do, it takes a while for that portfolio to catch up with the market. And That's benefits on the other end. When the market rates drop, our portfolio will slowly go down because we'll have these longer investments in it. So we're up to 3%, which is good, and that helps our bottom line until we, of course, spend the money on our capital projects.
I was thinking that as I was looking at the portfolio update in the last couple of days, that maybe I could just roll my poultry funds into that. Such a good job. Are there any comments or questions? Director Gross.
Joe, I should probably know the answer to this, but on page 7, where we've ratified the previous investments, and then on page 18, we have a list of investments. The ones on 7, does your office make those decisions, or is that the investment consultant?
That is the investment. The board hires PFM on what's called a discretionary basis, which means you're
Right.
giving them the discretion to make those investments based on the investment policy that we put
Right.
out. And our investment policy is the state of California investment policy, which is given out to agencies like us, and we adopt it. So they're essentially following the state's guidelines
Right.
when they make. Now, so that overall, those guidelines aren't specific, hey, you can't buy company A, but you can buy company B. That they don't get to that level of detail. That's the choice that we have become comfortable with over the years with public financial management, PFM, because they do their business with public agencies, and they have some understanding that they have a good understanding of what our risk profile is. You know, as I said at the very beginning of the conversation, our job is to make sure we never lose any of the public's money that we're stewarding.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Looks like our Wi-Fi issue at the meeting location is happening again, so please just bear with us. I also want to apologize. I inadvertently said that this was the Rules Committee meeting and it's the Finance Committee meeting. So thanks for your patience. We hope to reconnect shortly.
Would show up as an unemployed person. If they are looking for employment, if they're not looking for employment, or if they tell them that they are employed as a gig employee, the person's just gonna say they're employed and move on. So they're not gonna show up here as unemployed. But they may be underemployed. That's always been a tack of that particular survey, is it doesn't, and there is another one that gets underemployment. We don't show that here, that kind of tries to measure what underemployment means you don't have a full-time job, you haven't had a full-time job, and they get some data on that. And those people might fall into that bucket more likely. If they say, I'm looking for a full-time job, but I don't have one, I have this instead.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments for Joe? With that, I think, Mr. Pilpau, I know that you're probably here to speak with us. Why don't we take public comment before we ratify the actions of the.
General public comment.
He wants to speak.
Oh, you want to speak under general?
Joe's doing fine.
Okay, we'll let you.
Take that in the minutes.
Yeah.
All right, in that case, do I have a motion to approve? All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Let me make a correction. I need a different first. We're not a committee of the whole, so it's a
Oh.
committee member first.
All right, a committee member
I'll
would,
move.
all right,
Okay, thank you.
nice
And
catch.
now a second.
I'll second.
There we go.
Joe, how does that make you feel when no one will approve, do a first and second on your report? Right now, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Director Cochran?
Yes.
Director Giudice is absent. Director Grosboll?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Aye.
Director Rodoni is absent. Vice Chair Park?
Aye.
Chair Abbott's absent, and President Serio.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, 5 ayes.
Thank you. Item number 4 is to authorize the budget adjustment and our transfers. There's nothing under that item. Item number 5 is to authorize actions related to grant programs. There's nothing under that item. Item number 6 is the status report on the fiscal year 23-24 budget. And Mr. Wire, I think that's you again.
Yes, thank you very much to the committee. This is your monthly status report that we've been doing since we came into the financial issues with the pandemic. And if you could turn down to 2 pages down to page 25, and that is the table that we're using each month to sort of monitor how we're doing at balancing, or how we're going to balance the budget. Again, in that table on page 25, top right-hand corner, it was the deficit that was in the, or shortfall that was in the approved budget that was passed in June of 57 million. If you go down to line 1, that shows you that what we think is we're going to be using about approximately $42 million in federal one-time money to balance that. And the reason we don't need 57 million in federal one-time money to balance that is that we've had some changes in the first 2 months of the year. Those changes are then detailed below. Line 3 says, first, the 2 changes are basically 2 different things. We have some additional revenue that we did not budget, and we have some expected lower expenses, which we did not know at the time of the budget. So we hypothesized they would be there, but we didn't have them documented. So if on line 3, it shows you that there's 2.7 million more in tolls and fares. Line 4 says there's 2.1 million more in other revenues, which is primarily grant funds that have come in. And then line 5 says there's about $10 million less in expenses than we had expected for the first couple months of the year. And that as we said to you when we passed the budget, and we all talked about, we assumed that there would be some extra expenses because we put extra expenses into the budget to allow the district to expand its services if it needed to, if its customers came back, and so far we have not needed to expand them, so therefore those monies were not spent. So that's, this table shouldn't change too much as we go through this year if things continue along the path that we have seen. People's actions, our customers' actions stay basically the same. The expense number the expense savings number, whatever you want to call it, will probably grow a little bit, and that will reduce further the amount of federal one-time funding that we'll need to balance the budget. After this, in this report are just the usual monthly tables that show you what our revenues and were for fares and tolls. If there's any other questions, I have to answer them.
Are there any questions for
Joe, that 10 million in savings, is most of that personnel, or is it also the fact we're not running, ferry costs are less, we're not running as many buses, or is it almost all personnel?
It's quite a grab bag, but because the agency is roughly 70% salaries and benefits, the biggest part of the savings would be salaries and benefits. So positions that we don't have, they'd be in transit, but they would also be in other non-filled positions across the agency at any given time. And then a related costs usually related to service, fuel or parts or something that you don't need to have. So they would be in those categories primarily.
10 million seems like a lot in 2 months.
We want to help you avoid having difficult
Yeah.
decisions near term.
There must be.
I think what we're doing is we're doing a
response.
we're doing a very simple sort of math function here. So
Yeah.
some of it may just be to be honest, some of it may be spending that hasn't occurred yet that might occur later.
Yeah.
And it's because we're just subtracting one number from another, and that will change as we go through the year. We'll catch up with ourselves. Those types of expenses will happen. I don't know if you go back and look at last month's, you'll notice that there was a lot more quote unquote expense saving in the first month than there was in the second. The number has grown, but not doubled. which you would expect from 1 month to the second, you might think would double. It hasn't come anywhere near to doubling. And I think that's what will happen is we'll go forward through time. I think last year, if I remember correctly, the end when we ended the year, that 10 million number was close to 30 or something, or roughly in that ballpark. So, only 3 times this, and yet there's 10 more months to go. So I think it's just going to look a little larger in the beginning, and then it'll smooth out as we get closer.
And the additional revenue, I probably would get that from the weekly reports that you give, Dennis, but is that because of some of these special runs, the ferry to the ball games? Is that just more
It's
people over the bridge?
a better way to think about it is that there was a assessment made when we put the budget together, what we thought we would earn, and then there's what you actually earn. So it isn't necessarily, so the difference between the budget and the actual, and the budget is guess. So it's really, one could argue that, yeah, things might be a little better. And I think we would say traffic on the bridge is a little bit higher than we guessed. So yes, that's what you're seeing is that, or it's a little bit higher in ferry than we guessed and at the time. But it's as I think I've said this before, you could turn around and say, well, maybe your guesses weren't very good,
I believe there's also on the grant side, we
Yeah.
received about almost $2 million of Regional Measure 3 money that I don't believe we contemplated as part of the budget.
It was, they put that in last year. So it was
Okay.
sucked in.
It's more a curiosity. It's a positive report. Yeah.
It is. No, it's a good thing. So the fares and tolls is more of an estimate, and the same with the revenues. We get we get an estimate from MTC for the most part, and from the counties that comes many months ago. They make this guess a while back. So
Got it.
I think the fact that we're having a positive, I know people aren't always happy, but the economy, as I just mentioned earlier in the previous report, is kind of chugging along, and that's a good thing. These types of revenues, and the other revenues which come, they benefit from a sort of chugging along economy. That means sales tax continues to go. That consumer spending number we talked about, that drives some of these numbers because consumer sales tax revenues go back to Sonoma and Marin counties, and then we get a little bit of share of that.
And a couple of the large employers have mandated staff come in a couple days a week, where previously they were telecommuting. So that helps a little bit too.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, with the committee's permission, I think we'll have Joe do number 7 and 8, and then we'll call for public comment on all of his items. The monthly review of Golden Gate Bridge traffic tolls and bus and ferry. I know you talked a little bit, but maybe you want to talk a little more about it.
Sure. So that starts on page 33. And that's the summary introduction, so which turns down to page 35, which has the table with the data. These are your first 2 months of the activity on the bridge, bus, and ferry, and they sit in those double sets of squares from top to bottom, bridge, bus, ferry. We'll just take a look at the far right-hand column, and that's the one where you compare the revenues that we're actually getting to the revenues that we put in the budget. And I think it gets at some of the question we were talking about earlier. If you look at the first set of boxes across the top of the page, which is for the bridge traffic on the left and revenues on the right, the far right hand says we're up 8%. So essentially what that means is our actual revenues have been 8% higher than what we budgeted. And on the bridge, that comes for 2 reasons. One reason is that the traffic is a little bit higher, and I think it is, as Dennis mentioned. It's a couple percentage points up a little bit these last couple of months. These are good months for us. We like the summer months when it comes to traffic on the bridge. And the other thing is, we do have some unpredictable. I think over the long term, you can predict the amount of monies that come in from our collection efforts, through the DMV or through people paying their bills a little later or a lot later in some cases. We can, over many years, we can sort of smooth that out, but any given month, it can come in chunks. And so this, we could have had, and I don't know that for sure, but it looks to me like we could have had a little bit more revenue come in for these last couple of months, which put it up a little higher, the 8%. So I would not expect the year to be 8% over, but that would be great if it were. Then if you go down to the next set of boxes is bus ridership on the left and fare revenue on the right, far the way right-hand side. It's also about 8.5% up. That has something to do with the fact that we've had a little bit higher passenger than we budgeted. In other words, higher rate of passengers that we've got. And that's a good thing, a couple thousand more. And then ferry revenue is considerably over. This one is a little harder to predict. We do have, in ferry, we have the largest difference in price someone can pay for a trip. So you could be a part of a school group going to Angel Island and you could pay one rate, or you could be buying a ticket off out of the ticket machine for a price that's basically more than double of that. And we don't really know those mixes in this data here. We can't see those mixes of what it was. So the fact that the revenue was up considerably and the number of passengers isn't is probably because we had a change in the mix of passengers this summer. And summer is a time where we do get more activity with people just putting money into the ticket machines and buying tickets that are considerably more expensive than a school group might pay.
I was going to add, dead concerts at Oracle Stadium were great. 600 passengers per trip, and they don't pay the Clipper fare. They pay the cost of the trip.
Yeah. And that could have been what we're seeing here, because the summer months we get a little more traffic that way. But anyway, it's overall, I would say that the ferry ridership, even though it's slightly down, that's the number in the far off what we thought budget. It's higher than last year. Is too small of a number to even guess why it changed that much. It's just varies from month to month. And then the revenue being higher is probably, as I mentioned, it's a change in the mix, which is good. All right, so the rest of this report are the familiar 5-year tables and charts, graphs that we have. So I would, unless there's any questions on those, I would move into the next report, which is on page 43. So stop to see any questions. Otherwise, I'll go to page 43. You can always ask questions about any of them at the end, too. So page 43 is our next report, and that is the actual financials for the month. So these are your financials through 2 months of the fiscal year. And the detailed reports follow this cover page on page 43. We'll just take a look at the cover page. Far right-hand column, that is the current year. And the bold numbers are the ones we are going to look at. They're the second, third, and fourth numbers down in that far right-hand column in the middle of the page, page 43. So the operating revenues is the high number. It's 43 million through 2 months. That's a little over 20 million a month. And then expenses about 34 million, 35. And so that produces a positive revenues over expenses of about 8 million. And as we talked about last month, these are our high revenue months, these summer months. So we are really good to see that they're over the expenses. Things will look different in January and February. But for now, that's a good thing. It's very positive too. These revenues do not include any sort of one-time federal funding or anything like that. These are just revenues the district has earned or has earned through its services by getting grants, operating grants from the counties that it serves. So it's very positive, and we'll keep watching this as we go forward. I would expect, as I mentioned, that the gap will come closer together, and potentially it will probably in the winter months reverse, where we have more expenses than revenues. But anyway, good news as we've been talking about so far. And then I mentioned the detailed line item data is follows this report, and then page 53 is your capital report through 2 months, and it has also pie charts after it that talk about the various division splits for capital expenditures. But through the first 2 months, spending is a little under 10%, and as I've mentioned often, capital projects spend out when they do, and it's not something that follows a calendar very well. So this is really to give you an idea that, sure, if it was spot on, it'd be closer to 16, 17, 18%, but it's fine that it's down around 10%. Next month, it could jump up a lot depending on what bills get paid out based on what capital projects are going. So we'll keep looking at it each month, but there's no reason to be concerned that it's down a little bit below what it might be if it were spot on the monthly things. And with that, I'm open for any questions on any of those reports.
Thank you. Are there committee members that have questions for Joe or comments? And my notes here say that I didn't ask for public comment on Joe's items. Do you think there's someone online? I can't.
I don't think so,
Does
but I'm gonna
Justine have
check
someone?
in. Yeah,
All
I'm gonna
right.
check in. If you want, we can
Would you
take
please?
everything all at once,
All
6,
right.
7, 8, and 9.
Oh, and 9?
Yeah, we
All
can do
right.
that. Let me pull the online. Justine, do you have any speakers for items 6, 7, 8, or 9, or would you like to pull the public one more time to see?
I would like to poll one more time to see. Thank you. Do we have any speakers for any of
Yes.
these items today on the Finance Auditing Committee meeting? Please use ** to unmute yourself and let me know. Okay, thank you. We have no speakers this morning.
Oh, she has none. Oh, okay. Got it. She has no speakers on the line. Okay. we have
All right, there are no speakers on the line, and I know that Mr. Pilpau has been waiting. We have a card for him. Good morning.
Great. Good morning, David Pilpel. A number of random thoughts, if I can share with you for a couple of minutes. There's thousands of people waiting. So I think
it has to do with protocol, not how many people are waiting.
I think it would be nice if the Transportation Committee met at least quarterly to review the District Advisory Committee recommendations, agendas, and minutes, bus and ferry service changes, and system and route effectiveness and efficiency. I think it's been at least 4 months since Transportation has met, because there haven't been any items, but still, I think it would be good at least quarterly to have Transportation meet. I've commented before on moving the San Francisco bus routing from Mission Street to Market Street for the Civic Center basic trips. I hope General Manager Mulligan has had a chance to talk with staff, and I'm interested in hearing more on that. I think now is really the time, since there are only 3 trips an hour and Mission Street is congested, Market Street less so, and has a transit lane on Market Street. I've been trying to get current bus schedule information from the schedules department for almost the last 2 months. I just received some final documents. Hopefully that completes my request, but I'm a bit disappointed that it's taken this long. There's been some back and forth. The schedules review that I've been doing is intended to identify possible bus cost savings opportunities to increase service at minimal cost and reduce deadhead costs. That's the time and mileage for vehicles traveling out of service, not providing revenue service. I am really hoping to find a way to get 30-minute service rather than just hourly service on the 101 between San Rafael Transit Center and San Francisco. It's not a high cost item. There's a lot of deadhead moves between the San Rafael Bus Division 1 and San Francisco, either Sales Transit Center or the San Francisco lot, and I'm trying to see if there's a way to make that happen. That might be a great opportunity to increase ridership during midday and minimal cost and relatively high revenue per trip for the district. So that's where I'm trying to go with that, and it's taken a while to get the information. But those are some random thoughts. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Very thorough in your analysis of what we're doing. Do you have any comments?
We look forward to doing Mr. Pilpel's analysis when it's completed. So looking forward to it.
Director Grossbaugh.
Have you received, the transit division received any complaints about that 101 that David just talked about?
No, we have
more.
The complaints we get are for different routes. We would like to see more service during the commute period on the 101, which is actually more of a Sonoma route, and then from the transit center to San Francisco. And so staff has some ideas where we would like to add service next. One of the constraints we have right now, to be honest, is bus operators. We have a class that has 7 operators that recently started, and we have 12 in the pre-apprenticeship program as we speak. But if we had a few more operators, staff has identified some areas where they'd like to add a little bit of additional service. And part of that is also the Sonoma market today is not an express bus trip for commuters from Santa Rosa to the city. It stops and picks up in Petaluma, which adds a lot of time to the trip. So we would also be interested, when resources and ridership dictate the need, that we separate that, add some trips in Sonoma. So there's direct Petaluma service to the financial district during periods as well as direct from Santa Rosa. So staff has a whole host of ideas. We met earlier this week with all the other North Bay Transit operators to talk about how to better coordinate with Santa Rosa City Bus, Sonoma County Transit, Petaluma Transit, Marin Transit, to serve the 101 corridor trunk line more efficiently. And so there'll be some planning efforts coming up jointly among the agencies.
I appreciate you doing that analysis.
Thank you for that. Are there other questions or comments? Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thank you, Mike. You'd like to just stay, or do I have a second? Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there anyone objecting to adjournment? All right, with that, the meeting of the Finance Auditing Committee on behalf of David Rabbit is adjourned.
Thank you. It's 10:07.